Hello everyone, and welcome back to DMG. Remember when the things we put in our pockets had physical QWERTY keyboards? A while ago on the channel, I took a look at a Cassiopeia Pocket PC, or PDA, that had a full QWERTY keyboard. Designed for business and loaded with applications like Word and Excel, it was quite literally a PC that fit in your pocket. We don't see things like that anymore with the transition of pocket-sized devices to vertical form factor with larger screens and fewer features. Some say this transition started with the iPhone, but I disagree. It all started back when our smartphones weren't smartphones, and it all started with the PDA. Now, this Pocket PC comes only a few years after the Casio PDA with a full keyboard, and these were still business focused. I mean, you could get attachable keyboards for these, but the keys on here sure are a lot smaller than on a horizontal form factor device. And this is when we start to see the prioritization of entertainment over the business features. As phones went on, you could of course get phones with a physical keyboard until they started to disappear. They were hidden away as they were deemed unsightly, or maybe just to save space, probably the latter. And I mean, the desire for a physical keyboard was still obviously there. I mean, heck, the iPhone 5 was rumored to have a laser keyboard, but of course that never came to be. I mean, I don't see any laser keyboards here, although would eventually be replaced by the universal glass rectangle. And this is what every phone has looked like for the past, 5 years. Needless to say, it's about as hard to find a phone with a physical keyboard as it is to find someone who still listens to music on cassette tapes. That said, let's look at the Planet Computer's Astro Slide 5G, a modern 5G smartphone with a physical keyboard. Well, let's get all these out of the way, because it's time for our attention to go to the Astro Slide. I've already taken it out of the box. I've just put it back in the box so that I can show you what the unboxing experience is like. However, I wanted to use it first before doing a review on it for clear reasons. I wanted to get a sense of what using this device is like. Now here, I should say, this is not a sponsored review. I will be saying a lot of positive things about this phone just because I like it, not because I'm paid to say them. So I have a feeling that already says quite a lot about this device. But let's go ahead and say a little more. First of all, I really love the box design. It gives a solid overview of the phone without being too bland and just listing the specs. Here, 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigabytes of flash storage, and 13 megapixel front camera and 48 megapixel back camera. It does dual SIM, micro SD, and eSIM, 6.39 inch screen. It has a custom button that you can program. It actually has 2 USB-C ports and an audio jack. But here's the main feature, the mechanical keys. The rest of the box just goes a little more into detail of the phone itself, and the ends just say Planet Computers. Under this panel is the phone itself, and I guess I'll just do that. And under here is where the charging cable and power brick were, and in this little sleeve is our documentation. Oh, it's not open on the end. It comes with a screen wipe, which is quite nice, a quick start guide, some lovely stickers, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Although you don't need too much more. At this point, it's very self-explanatory how to use a cell phone. Although the guide does go into detail of how to set the function key and all of that, that is exclusive to just this phone. And looking at it from the top, it absolutely just looks like a standard smartphone. And the back, it could also appear ordinary at first glance until you notice that two of the feet, which normal phones don't have in the first place, are on this separate section, and that is to enable the sliding mechanism to work. For support, the feet extend out and go under the display so that your phone can sit like that. If you were alive in the 90s, you may remember the Scion 5 PDA, and if you remember the Scion 5, you're probably thinking, gee, well that sure does look a whole lot like a Scion 5, and that's because the same person actually built, or rather designed, this Planet Computer's phone. So that is why the keyboard is near identical to a Scion 5, and from what I've heard, has a quite similar feel. Before I get into anything else, of course I'm going to cover the keyboard. How does the keyboard feel? Because the keyboard is really what sets this apart from most modern phones. That and the repairability. I'll get into that a little later, but I love both aspects. I should clarify that these are not the apps it comes with. Most of these are apps that I've put on it because, well, it's my phone and I've been using it. When it comes to apps it comes with, though, luckily there's really not too much to see. It's very non-bloated stock Android with only a first-party email app, Vivaldi browser, and a few more apps preloaded onto this device. But basically, it's just stock Android, and I love that. Comes with a few custom notification sounds, I believe, and those few apps, but that's it. First, this Planet key opens a dock like you would see on a desktop OS like Mac OS or Windows. And down here, with an application in settings, you can actually edit what apps are pinned here. And by default, Word is one of them. And I feel like that is going to be the best way to... Okay, looks like my... Looks like my friend typed on that one, but it seems like the best way to demonstrate the keyboard on this device. Now, under the keys are printed either special symbols or function keys, like changing the volume or taking a screenshot, all of which are quite nice if you're not holding the phone like that, because those keys are harder to press when it's sitting flat on a surface. If you hit function key and the shift key, and the tab key, you get that little blue light indicating caps lock. Now, it's a backlit keyboard, so personally I don't understand why they couldn't have put another LED under the tab key and use that space for something else, but that's just a very minor complaint. The backlight is also tied to the phone's ambient light sensor, so it only comes on when it's needed. And turning off my studio lights, you can see that the backlight did indeed switch on. You may have noticed that I am consistently failing to hit space, and that is another one of my minor concerns. The space key doesn't have any stabilizers, meaning you have to hit it pretty much directly in the middle for it to do anything. As you can see, it doesn't register most clicks on the very end. So sometimes, and you also have to hit it a little harder than you would expect, and that does apply to all of the keys. However, sorry for starting with the negatives there. The keyboard is absolutely fantastic, and it's certainly a lot easier to use than a tiny one like on some of the devices that I showed you. It's of course in like a 7-inch device, so it's not going to feel just like a full laptop keyboard, but this truly is the best keyboard you can get on a phone. You also get full arrow keys, which some laptops don't even have, so having a full arrow key layout with dual shift keys is very, very nice. Nothing was compromised when it comes to the keyboard. And when you're done using it, it just conveniently snaps back closed into your typical phone form factor. And it's an average-sized phone. It's not too massive. Personally, I prefer slightly smaller devices, but I feel like the presence of the keyboard very much excuses the large size, and that very much justifies it for me. One of the nifty apps it came with is called OneSearch, and basically it just searches all your files and documents and the web. So if I just type something, we get multiple options and an ad to buy the phone I already own. But this is an app developed by Planet, and as I understand, it's exclusive to these phones. So I very much like this little app. It's quite convenient, and if you just start typing on the lock screen, it automatically goes to OneSearch. Sorry, not the lock screen, the home screen. Now, the keyboard is not only good for business, it's actually surprising, but many games are able to leverage the physical keyboard. So, although gaming is not one of this phone's primary target markets, it's definitely not only doable, but quite pleasant on this device. When it comes to gaming, Crossy Road is of course not the most demanding game. However, I have tried some much more demanding games like Asphalt 9, and this quad-core CPU and its 4 GPU cores hold up quite well. With the highest settings, I haven't been seeing any significant lag or stutter, and the battery lasts quite a long time. An interesting aspect of this phone is that you would assume the processor is down here, but I've disassembled the phone and all this is the keyboard, battery, and speakers. The actual CPU and RAM are all up in the screen area right here. This does make those components a little harder to replace, but it's a double-edged sword. It makes the battery much easier to get to, and that's probably what you're going to need to replace the most in a phone if you treat it well, but use it reasonably. And speaking of the battery, let's tear into my brand new phone and get to it. It's very easy to open. You just stick a spudger, probably a plastic one would be a better idea, in between the plastic case and keyboard on the bottom, and just run it along the edge. And the casing just starts to pop off. Once you're at this point, you can probably use your fingernail on some of the sections to get it off. We've got it off up at the top, and it's almost all the way off. Just maybe a little more wiggling, and the bottom will come right out. Granted, I am a professional, however, that is the fastest opening phone I've ever seen. You can get this thing open in well under a minute. Here we can see the internals of this phone. The springs for the feet are quite nifty. I like the way you can see that whole mechanism work, and really that's what takes up most of the side. But here we can see the speakers right here, the two USB ports, which both have fast charging and fast data transfer. So it's not like one is slower than the other, they do the same thing. And then here is our headphone jack, which is quite nice, down at the bottom. Here is our camera and flash and the connection pads for the wireless charging coil on the inside of the back. Of course, here's your battery, and that's the main focus of this repairability. Just 8 screws, 4 to a side, to take it out. And that is truly the most easily replaceable battery I've seen in any phone. This repairability unfortunately does compromise some features that modern phones have, like being waterproof. This device is clearly not going to be waterproof. Although the Astro is quite a nice device, it's not flawless, and I'll get into some of the small problems I have with it. First is the speaker placement. They are on the edge of the phone on what's typically the left side. So if you hold it right in the middle, all your audio, whether right or left, just sounds like it's coming from the left. So you get unintentional mono audio. Of course, if you hold your phone closer to the bottom, like I do, then you're blocking one of the speakers, which gives it a muffled sound. And there's really no way to avoid this. Likewise, if you have it in landscape and you're typing, your hands cover the speakers. So if you're, let's say, listening to music while writing an email, the music will sound quite muffled. What I think would have been better is, since all the processing stuff is in the top of the phone anyway, and you have these bezels that are slightly taller at the top and bottom of the phone, why not just put 2 speaker grills? The top would house the speaker for when you're on call, and the bottom would house another speaker and the microphone for when you're on call, and that seems like it would fix the big audio issue. Of course, I am not aware of all of the complexities that go into designing a phone. However, I've seen a good deal of phones that have that. For example, this HTC, well, it doesn't have the bottom speaker, but it does have that speaker grill up at the top. I've seen a lot worse audio on phones, to be fair, like this Motorola that has one speaker and it's on the back. So the Astro Slide honestly doesn't get it too bad. However, the camera is another thing I have issues with. It's not horrible, it's not unusable, but the sensor doesn't really pick up on color very well. And it seems like Planet Computers tried to overcompensate by way oversaturating the photos in post, leading especially nature photos to look really unrealistic. The portrayal of colors is not quite right. Contrast and saturation never feel like what they should be. So that's really my main complaint with this phone. Obviously, its selling point is the keyboard, but in 2023, I think we figured out how to make phone cameras pretty well, so perhaps it could be improved. The front camera seems to suffer a lot less from the saturation issue. It does look a little bit grainy, but it's the front camera. I mean, it's not like people use that all too often, or at least I don't. And if your target market is people who want a keyboard in a phone, they probably won't be taking selfies all that often. So I think the front camera is excusable, but the rear camera maybe could use a little bit of work. Complaints aside, I absolutely loved this phone, and I have no problem recommending it to anyone who's looking for a phone with a keyboard, which is a surprising amount of people once you start asking around. It's not only convenient for just typing, but it's also quite a convenience for playing mobile games with more of a PC style input if that's what you want. Its processing power is sufficient, its connectivity is fantastic, and its expandability, repairability, and just general build quality are all stellar. And again, oh, unintentional space joke with Astro there. Again, I have no problems recommending this to anyone who is looking for a phone in this niche. That's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope this was enjoyable or informative, and if it was, please subscribe to the channel. I could use some help. But that's it for this one. Thank you everyone for watching, and I hope to see you next time.